Here we go, here we go, here we go. Well, we've got a bit of an issue here with the mouse. This is going to be interesting. I've not got a mouse, guys. Well, hello and welcome in to another stream. I don't know, is this entertainment now, Stephen? I don't know, but whatever it is, I am the host, unfortunately. Stephen's far better at doing intros than I could ever hope of being. Some say I'm better at the outros, others may disagree. My name's John C. Walsh. I'm here. I'm your host. Joining me to the left is a Mr. Stephen John McLaughlin. He's the co-host on the show tonight. Stream tonight. Stephen, we're going to be talking about a whole host of things. Well, we're not. We're talking about two things. First and foremost, the Beatles picked up their 8th Grammy Award win. First came in 60 years ago, 61 years ago, I think. Probably 64, 63. First ever Grammy Award win. Many decades. Minimum of 3 generations, 4 generations later, they've picked up another Grammy Award win. It's a momentous moment for music, for the band, and for technology, I feel, because the technology utilised in the creation of Now and Then, groundbreaking, cleaning up a track from 40 odd years ago, taking out click tracks and hiss and I presume a piano playing with the use of AI. So for a whole multitude of reasons, it's massive, this. I don't know if you've got anything to say whilst I try and connect my mic up or my mouse up to a charger.
It feels
a bit of shambles, guys. I'll go. Can I go to you, Stephen? Can I do a wide of you?
It's been 15 months or so, John. Oh, that doesn't look good at all. Word. But John, just in terms of the song's release, it feels, I think, maybe 15, 16 months ago since it's released now, isn't it? It's been a good while, and it seems like a long time. I know we're going to go on about the Stones in a little moment as well, with Hackney Diamonds as well, which came out roughly about the same time. I think it was around about September, October 2023, if I recall.
Yep.
But in terms of obviously Now and Then, you're absolutely right, and I never really considered the sort of technological side of the song's achievement. We knew about this song for a very long time, 15 years. I would say it's probably been on YouTube under another guise called, I think the channel's called I Am Phony, who had this video up for such a long time. And I think one started perhaps maybe in the summer of 2023 when I Am Phony's video of 15 years was pulled from YouTube, and then we knew there was something going on. We knew that Paul and Ringo were working on something, perhaps with Giles Martin or perhaps with Jeff Lynne at the time. We weren't really sure. But yeah, I mean, in terms of the song itself, I'm happy that it's got the recognition it has. Is it the best Beatles song out there? Definitely not. Is it the best Beatles song from the sort of, the anthology period? Definitely isn't, but it's still a good solid song as well. In terms of production, Lennon's voice is clear as crystal. It doesn't sound like it came off an old scratchy tape. It doesn't sound like it was recorded half-heartedly by John Lennon, who was just putting some ideas down on tape at the time. It wasn't even a proper rehearsal, a proper performance, but that was the sort of calibre and the quality of the Beatles. Even when they were mucking about, it was still gold. John, we've listened to some of the AI stuff. And this AI stuff, it's actually original content that's been pulled from outtakes. Madman being one of them. I think it's a fantastic track. And AI has cleaned that up.
Yeah.
But again, just going back to the point, the Fab Four mucking about is still better than some of the music that's out there today.
Steve, we used to say that, didn't we?
Recognition once more.
We did used to say that when we were listening to the outtakes from the anthology and whatnot. H.E. Sweet, a couple of other ones I'm not thinking of immediately, but just mucking around in the studio doing different things, and it would be perfect instrumental work. The guitars, the bass, the drums, all perfect. Could go out to release, because that's how good a musician each and every one of them was, in terms of when they got down and they performed. And that's something that came out with Let It Be and the Get Back stuff. You could see the process of them coming up with these iconic songs and putting an album together. A little bit scruffy at times in the initial process, but as they get more and more serious, you could see the musicianship and how good they were coming through. And certainly those outtakes, you could hear the instrumental stuff was, you could fucking use that on any sort of proper release. Minimal sort of, what would you call it, producing required. But they're mucking about with the vocals. They're half-arsing it. Commonwealth is the example I think of right away. Yeah. Along with Ain't She Sweet, Lennon's making up song words hydrophonically and things like that. Yeah. But we used to say that. But they're taking the piss here. This is just them mucking around between proper takes. And that's better than half the shit that's out just now, which is damning for music of that time, which was probably about 10 years ago. I don't think it's really changed. This is a whole other fucking rabbit hole you could go down. Just no real individuality now. People are going back to the 90s, the 80s with their get-ups.
I certainly wouldn't compare any artist to the Beatles. I think that's a little unfair.
No, but it's just, there's no difference in decades now, Stephen. You go back to that time, it was totally different, the 50s to the 60s to the 70s.
There's no characters, John, and I think it's all became a bit sterile in terms of the music industry as a whole, where it's said and led by the big bosses, the ones that don't do the singing, the ones that don't write the songs, or sometimes they do write the songs depending on the artist, but artists are said and led and are told what to do, what to eat, what to wear now. It's so far from, obviously the Beatles and the Stones and the Who, the Kinks, Zeppelin, the list goes on, Floyd. It's a different period now, it's a different time. I think it was Pete Buck from the R.E.M. had said rock and roll became the jazz. The way the jazz was looked at in the 60s.
Yeah.
Rock and roll became that now as the new jazz for this generation. And it's sad, but I'll always be a rocker. I'll always listen to the Beatles, perhaps maybe once or twice a day at least. And going back to the song now and then, John, I kind of revisited some of Rick Beato's stuff, and he did a breakdown of the song, and he also went into the explanation of how the AI extracted Lennon's voice or deactivated the background noise. I'm not really sure which way it went, but just
I think it was
separate is the next thing we saw it, and as you said in Peter Jackson's Get Back documentary, and it was utilised very tastefully and very informative in terms of the content and the audio that he utilised for certain scenes that perhaps maybe didn't match up perfectly with obviously the scene, but it gave you an idea of what was going on and gave you an idea of what was going down in the conversations that were being had at the time, and you wouldn't have had that without the MAL system. And they've used this again in this song, and they've used it brilliantly. The only thing I would say in terms of this song, which I don't think is that good, is the middle part of the original song being extracted. I don't know why Paul did it. I'm sure he's got his reasons. Perhaps maybe it just flowed better as a pop song. Taking the "I Don't Want to Lose You" part out, I'm not really sure. Mm-hmm. But it's still a good song. I mean, the video's fantastic as well. I like the video.
Was it not, with that part of the song, was it not that Lennon hadn't finished the vocal? Am I right in assuming? I think it was like na 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 na.
Kind of bit, so I can understand it. But I mean, there was bits where maybe Paul could have stepped in. He did it with Freeze a Bird, didn't he? Yeah. So I think in terms of, I've listened to the track of Separation as well on YouTube. Paul's voice obviously been 80, I think it was 81 at the time. He's not got the voice he once had, but that's understandable. He's not going to have that at 81. But I think he utilised his voice very well as a sort of an undercurrent to Lennon's sort of main vocal, and you can hear it. So I thought it was good. I thought it was a good song. Did I think it would win a Grammy though? I didn't think it would. I just didn't think it would. Not in terms of doubting the song's credibility or its credentials or quality. I just thought perhaps maybe music snobbery would kick in, and it did in the 1990s with Radio 1 refusing to play Freeze a Bird in Real Love. So I thought it was going to be the same case again.
Which is ironic because it played now and then.
Number one, you've got to remember that as well.
Yeah.
This was their number one in the UK. I don't know if it hit number one in the US. Someone perhaps maybe could help us out. I'm not sure.
Well, Stephen, obviously the DJs back in the 90s, I don't know who would have been doing it back then, but clearly a bit arsey, bit up themselves, thought they were better than the Beatles at that time. And that's one thing you can't really levy, is that the right term? at the current crop of DJs, because certainly Jack Saunders, who does the charts, he was willing the Beatles to get number one. He was stoked, as the Americans love to say, pumped, excited, whatever fucking adjective you want to use, over the moon that they got number one when they got it. And certainly the Beatles did push, the Radio 1 did push the song. They played it numerous times when it was obviously out, and that probably helped. As much as a lot of people do like to shit on Radio 1, and look, I can understand why at times, because it is very pop-centric, very much focused at 16 to like 25-year-olds or something. But they still have a lot of sway with the younger generations, and I would presume that the Grammy, if you looked at the demographics of who actually tunes in, vast majority of acts who are going to this will be the likes of Taylor Swift, I would imagine, Cardi B, Miley Cyrus, younger again than them, probably a new wave coming up. Younger acts with also younger fan bases. So if they're getting that in their eardrums and they're listening to it through different avenues like Radio 1, then it's bringing it to their attention. And that maybe, I don't know how much that sways people at the Grammys who make the decision on who's going to win these awards, but Stephen, it was a good song, man. I mean, we spoke about it at length when it came out. I didn't rank it as the best of the sort of the tapes that Lennon had released or sent to Macca in the late 80s, I think it was. Well, he'd sent them to him before he passed, but Macca got his hands on them, didn't he, in the late 80s, in the build-up to the anthology.
Yoko gave Paul the tapes at John's Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction in 1990.
So it was 1990.
I think it
94.
was.
So that was right on the anthology when it was a thing. I didn't think it was the best of those 3 tracks that have now been released. For me, Free as a Bird is probably number 2. I think Real Love is the best of the lot. Just something about that sonically, the guitar playing, the vibe, it feels like a Beatles song. The way they're all bouncing in. George is very hands-on on it, and you can hear that. And I always maintain the best Beatles songs. I mean, you can go down a rabbit hole, what's your favourite Beatles song, but there's a special place in my heart for when they're all harmonising. And it's one thing I don't think they did enough during their run, them all harmonising together. You think of bands that harmonise, the Beach Boys and whatnot, fucking Bee Gees to a lesser extent from that era. They're all kind of familial and linked in one way. The Beatles weren't. They were very much not family members, but their voices harmonised beautifully, and George was a big part of that. His voice, he's an unsung hero. A lot of those backing vocals, he could go right up there before he was tanking the oil and lemon or whatever the fuck that concoction was he was getting into in the 70s. What I feel, I can't say. He was fucking hammering his voice. He could go right up there. And that's one of the aspects of the Beatles I loved. And certainly Real Love, he's right involved.
I think in terms of harmonies, Jordan, I don't think it gets any better than This Boy. I think that's probably one of the better tracks.
Yes, it is as well.
I mean, there's so many when you think about it. If I Fell was another one, wasn't it? That sort of period between 1964 and 66 was probably the peak for their harmonising. And I just think they do it again in Real Love. And I've seen the isolated tracks for that as well, and they've still got it. Paul and George were fantastic at doing that when John was taking the lead vocal.
Yeah.
And it was just, as you said, I don't think they did it enough. I know they wanted to move away. They were always ever evolving in terms of their style of music. So I understand they don't like to repeat themselves, and they didn't, to be fair to them. You know, I don't think you can compare 2 tracks from the Beatles that sound exactly the same or sound similar. That's the beauty of their work. But going back to obviously Now and Then, it was a song that, I don't know, perhaps maybe tonally it didn't fit in with Double Fantasy, and that's why it was omitted, along with Bird as well and Real Love. Perhaps maybe further down the line, if John wasn't murdered, he perhaps may have released these at some point, maybe in the early 80s, who knows, but I'm just glad they're out there. I'm glad that people can hear these. John, I watched back in October on YouTube. It's always round about, I think it's on his birthday, October 9th. There's a gathering in Strawberry Fields in Central Park. People singing these songs, and I happened to watch one of the videos, which was a Free as a Bird one, and it was just a crowd of maybe 30 people. And I'm thinking, that's just outside the Dakota, you know. He never would have thought in his sort of wildest dreams that a song that he was just sort of mucking about on. 50 years down the line, would be played by 30, 40 people outside, his apartment block, singing it and celebrating his life,
I mean, Freeze a Bird's a great song as well. It really is. I mean, just everything about it, the promotional, the video. But Now and Then is a great song. I'm not shitting on it. I think it deserves the success it's got, the #1 in the UK. Obviously, there's a lot of nostalgia and love for the Beatles that's helped the song get to where it is. Like I says, for me, if they released those 3 songs now, I think Real Love would probably be the most popular, just because of the way it flows, the guitar solo, even there's there not 2 solos? I want to say there's a guitar solo. I may be talking nonsense, I need to get back and listen to it again, but certainly the guitar solo is unbelievable. I'm thinking about fucking all those years ago. I'm thinking about George again, and there's like a piano and a guitar. But, it's still a great song. I mean, there is a lot of nostalgia drove it to where it is, but I think it was required, man. It was bookending that era of the Beatles where they did get back together, and they were very sort of vocal about sensing John's presence in the studio when they were working. I think it was like a light went off or something happened in the studio and they remarked on it. That's probably John. And I think Paul, at the back of his mind, and also Ringo to an extent as well, would have thought, if we don't get this song finished, it will feel like there's something incomplete, that we've missed a trick. And with AI and the advancement of technology and the way it's starting to intermix with arts, I mean, the stars aligned. Stephen, for me, I know we're getting off-piste again, but I would love to see that AI technology utilised. No harm to Jeff Lynne, the guy worked miracles back in the day. Analogue, I think, production work, separating. To this day, I don't know how he did it. It's just ridiculous what he accomplished. But I would like to see that technology used.
Used on Freeze a Bird and
just to clean up the tracks properly.
Yeah. I think Giles Martin and Peter Jackson could get in there and do that. Obviously, I don't know if they need Jeff Lynne's consent, but I'd certainly involve Jeff in some fashion. He knows the tracks better than most people. And I mean, just getting back to Jeff's production on those 2 songs, and I can understand why they didn't obviously proceed with Now and Then at that period in the mid-1990s, because the technology wasn't there. Now and Then was more badly conditioned than the other 2 songs, and I think with Free as a Bird, John and his vocals and his piano are locked in, and you can kind of hear it every time there's a speech pattern. You can hear a piano.
Yeah.
Every sort of sound that comes out his mouth, you hear a piano sort of in the background. It's still there. You couldn't do it. You couldn't do it with analog technology. But I think they can do it now. I think they can go in, put the MAL system in place, extract the voice, and then bring it through. I don't know how good it would be, to be fair. There's some charm about it as well. John's passing, I think in 1995 when Free as a Bird came out, it was 15 years after his death, and there's something eerie about the sort of vocal technique in the song. It's very eerie, it's very echoey and distant. He is singing from the heavens or whatever. I don't know if that's the best way to explain it. But
I know what you're saying. It is. It's like he's from
something nice about that, or something nice that he's reaching out to the other 3 guys, and you see it in the video when they cross the road. I think George, Ringo, and Paul run across the road, and then when you see them walking past, John's at the back of them. He's walking behind them as if he's crossed over, or they've crossed over to him. It's a good sort of visualization from the director that put that in there.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a fantastic video as well, isn't it? Free as a Bird, it's probably one of the best music videos I've ever seen. Yeah,
the way that they obviously had little Easter eggs and whatnot from various different parts of the Beatles. I don't know, not filmography I was going to say, it's discography. But Stephen, I think they could. I definitely think they could utilise the AI technology. I think when it was broached, the subject, and they announced that they were going to do Now and Then, I think they suggested that it was going to be training on John's vocal sort of aspects of the track. It would then be able to pick out what was his voice, what was the piano and click track and whatnot, and then it could separate it and almost reconstruct it in a way. I think that's the way that they did it. So I see no reason why they couldn't. Again, it's just do they see a reason for it? I mean, the originals are what they are. They were technical fucking masterpieces at the time, so, and they're brilliant songs, much beloved by Beatles fandom, so probably no reason to go back and touch them at this point. But Stephen, in terms of Now and Then, man, again, can you understand when the song got released? Because certainly now, I mean, there's been a lot of nonsense about George vetoing it, saying it was, what was his words? What did they say about it?
Fucking rubbish.
Fucking rubbish, something to that effect. I mean, it's not rubbish, but what I can...
Only George will be able to answer that one, John. But I know where you're coming from, and I think we talked about this.
In terms of feels, it doesn't really feel like a beat. It doesn't. But I mean, it is a Beatles song now because they've all been involved in the production. But again, out of those three, you can understand why they were keen to do Real Love. Free as a Bird. They sound like Beatles songs. They sound like the three of them or four of them could get together and make it feel like a Beatles song. Now and Then, in terms of the tone, the pacing of it, it doesn't immediately strike you as a Beatles song. It does feel like a John song with the other three doing work on it. So I can almost understand. It's not fucking rubbish. He was talking nonsense. But I can kind of get George's perspective on it, that maybe not the best choice out of the ones they were gave. Yeah. But look, it's come out and it's now...
I think as well, though, I think you've got to... we'll never know, obviously. We're not privileged to see what was going on in the studio in 1994, 1995 when they were recording these songs. Mm-hmm. I still believe there was tension between George and Paul, although many bridges had been built over the sort of late 80s between both of them. They were dying out and they were spending a lot of time with each other. And George said in one of his interviews, you know, I had to get to know Paul all over again because I hadn't seen him in a decade. But I still think there was tensions there. People obviously saying, you know, things like George had to do the anthology, although he didn't want to because of his finances, etc. I'm not really sure about that. I've not really dug deep into that sort of theory or anything like that. But I think he looked like, and certainly with the anthology and his commentaries throughout the documentary, he sounded like he was enjoying it.
Yeah.
But in terms of the production of the songs, I think Paul made some comment about the slide guitar, about, oh, it's My Sweet Lord again, that kind of thing. So that could rub George up the wrong way. We saw how sensitive he could be in the Get Back documentary, you know, and rightly so at times. But I think, you know, if he wasn't comfortable or happy in a situation, he would step back from it. So it could be an excuse from George to say, I don't want to do this now, I don't want to do Now and Then. You know, it's just rubbish, I don't want to do this. And I think there was a quote him saying something along the lines, and I do laugh at this one, about his writing was going a wee bit off by the end, talking about John. And I was like, come on, you know, John, not everything he touched was gold, let's be honest, you know, but to say he was getting a little bit off in terms of his writing and his quality of writing, nearly in the end, he's obviously talking about by 1980. I think it's a bit of a nonsense.
Wow, that's my dog barking.
Some of the songs on Double Fantasy, and I know it's not everyone's cup of tea, but there is some great tracks on that album. Really good. I'm Losing You being one of them. I like the cheap track version, but the one that's actually on the album is fantastic.
I always blend Milk and Honey and Double Fantasy together, so again, I'd have to go and check. I love Step Out. That's one of my favourite Lennon songs of his entire solo stint.
Watching the Wheels as well.
Watching the Wheels, yeah. Beautiful Boy, Women. When was Women? Was that was Double Fantasy, wasn't it? Yeah.
Just Like Starting Over, yeah.
Just Like Starting Over. I don't agree with that his writing was going to shit. I think it was different because he was in a different part of his life. He wasn't hungry at the start, walking past Guy.
It was a shared album. It wasn't just a John Lennon album.
Steve, you can only sing about your life experiences and what you're going through in that moment. And at that moment, he was a house husband, baking bread in the house with Sean. And he was obviously going off on vacations and whatnot. Holidays, as we like to say over here. You can't sing about shit that's not resonating with you. You can only be you in that moment. And obviously, in terms of his writing and what he's singing about, it's totally different to Lennon from 10 years earlier or 20 years earlier. So George, obviously, I mean, I love George. I love the guy. He's one of my favourites out of the band. I just love his humour. I love the way that just his laugh and even his voice and what he did as a Beatle and obviously post. But a lot of people do like to to hoist George up as this sort of the top Beatle post in the solo sort of career. They actually think he's the best Beatle in terms of output. And I don't really agree with that. I'm sorry, I don't. Obviously, John, with the first two albums, I mean, you could argue those are the fucking right up there, some of the greatest albums ever made, let alone post-Beatles albums. I mean, Imagine's incredible. I mean, you can argue about the content. Jealous Guy, Cripple Inside, I'm also taking pot shots at Paul. But you cannot do down John's solo output, and I know a lot of Beatles fans love to rewrite history about John now and say that he's some sort of bad guy because of things he openly admitted he did. Everyone's broken to some extent, we're all human. Macker as well, you can shit on Macker about making Muzak and being too fence-sittery, if you'd like. That's not even a word, but I've made it up now. But again, Wings and what he did, and the likes of McCartney and even Ram to an extent, fucking incredible.
So, you know, it's what's your taste, you know? I
mean, All Things Must Pass was fucking incredible. But
if you want to compare all four of them throughout the whole decade of 1970 to 1980, it's, you know, it's without a doubt, commercially, Paul McCartney was the most successful commercially in terms of sales, etc. But I don't base good music on sales. No. I never did. The same with film as well. It's all subjective. It's what you like and as an individual. In terms of Paul, yeah, I think maybe you've got to bear in mind John Lennon only recorded for 5 years out of that decade, and then they stepped away.
I mean, I'm biased, Stephen, because I'm a Lennon man. So I'm biased and I won't admit it, but I mean, the people shit in Mind Games, I think it's a great album. It's amazing. Mind Games, the song, there's so many great songs on that album, and they're all distinctly different. I mean, he's kind of going down a weird, like, I don't know, could you call it a country route? It's something different for John Lennon anyway. And then he does a rock and roll album, probably out of necessity, because he was getting sued, I think, under the terms of agreeing not to be sued. I think you had to produce.
Together, wasn't it?
Yeah. It was Chuck Berry, wasn't it? He had to do a sort of rock and roll album. But he did that. He done that so well. So I mean, Walls and Bridges. I mean, I think his output was great. I don't like comparing the four of them. No, even Ringo had a #1 in America, and he had some great songs. I mean, you can argue they're nowhere near the calibre of the other three, but he was still a hugely successful solo act. Yeah. And I just don't know how we've gone into this, but I don't understand why certain Beatles fans, and we're in a group, they love to shit.
Sort of solo output, John, and how he's sort of propped up as the most. All Things Must Pass was a fantastic album, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
And I'm a fan of Phil Spector's production. I know a lot of people don't like it, but for that album, it really worked. It worked in Imagine as well. Plastic Ono Band was another one, which was a fantastic album, very raw, very uncut. And I think it was only John, Ringo and Klaus that was on that, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But I think in terms of solo output from the four of them, I think they all had their sort of bit. Paul's obviously McCartney, Ram, and probably Band on the Run from the sort of early 70s to mid 70s was sort of peak Paul McCartney.
Yeah.
Again, you know, Paul rattles out these albums, you know, every year, and some of them are great.
He's always got a song though, hasn't he? There's always at least one song on an album, even into the 90s, late into the 90s, into the 2000s. There's even the most recent stuff, you can always pick out at least one song that's just, you can tell, I mean, he's still got it, he's got the touch. The voice might not be what it was. Again, that's where you can utilise AI and maybe put a 70s spin on it or whatnot. It's strange with Macca, I mean, I love Macca and the Beatles, he was so important. But his 70s voice is one I always think of. There's just something about his voice in the mid-70s, early 70s, it was fucking special. Don't know what it was, but a lot of people, when they do the AI, they do utilise the sort of 70s era Macca. I mean, you could do that, and we did it, Steve. We kind of went down a rabbit hole with people using AI on the most recent album. And when you make his voice more youthful, and it's got more maybe upward inflections instead of sort of a little bit more brittle and lower on the vocal sort of spectrum, if you'd like, if that's even the right terminology, it totally changes it. You can see the melodic fucking brilliance.
It's definitely one thing that I'm glad they didn't utilise on the Now and Then track.
Yeah.
Because there's levels to Now and Then as a song, and visually as well in the video, where you're taking John from
1966 or something, 67.
No, the actual Now and Then recording was from 78 or something, wasn't it?
No, I'm talking about. I thought you were talking about the video. It was the Hello Goodbye.
and you're taking George's acoustic stuff from '95, but then you've got Paul and Ringo in 2023. And I'm glad that because it kind of represents the title of the
Yeah,
song now.
yeah,
And
you're
then.
right, Stephen,
It's
yeah.
all through the ages, you know, and I think it was Rick Beato said something about this isn't, it's not a nostalgic song in the sense, it's more like a time machine. And it is, you're
Yeah.
going back to different periods of these four members and putting their sort of performances together and making something magic from it.
It's like the musical equivalent of the Five Bloods, where they're looking back.
Yeah.
And they're
Yeah.
older now, and you're seeing John and George when they were younger, and intermeshing. And it just, there's something poignant about that when you have got the older Macca with this sort of sombre, sort of brittle performance. I don't like saying brittle because the guy can still rock out for hours, but
emotional part of the song is the line "I miss you."
yeah,
Because you can hear Macca in the background while John's taking the lead, and
Yeah.
both of their voices, as you said, just merging together on that line itself is emotional. Because, they were almost brothers, and I know they had their shit in the 1970s and stuff like that, but I do believe all four members would have reunited for something like Live Aid or something
Yeah.
like that eventually. Yeah.
No, I was thinking that, Stephen, you were talking about it maybe being an off-cut of Double Fantasy. That I think my fucking mind that Lennon did envisage a time where he would get back together with Macca, if not maybe George again. I think he was probably feuding more with George at the end. I think it was really bad. Like, proper over the biography, wasn't it, or the book, where George didn't even mention Lennon at any point. He took that bad. I think John did have a bit of an ego.
Quite spiteful.
Yeah, he did have a bit of an ego, John, at times. In fairness, he did. And I think if anyone doesn't go out, I mean, he deserved to be mentioned, but he doesn't need to be mentioned by George in a book to know what influence he had on George. I mean, that's not necessary. You just rise above it. But I think things like that would have rubbed him up the wrong way. But I do think he would have seen a time in the future, and we know how brilliant these guys were. They were penning tracks in their fucking teens that they released.
If John was still around, I think he's the type that would do a vanity search on Google.
Oh yeah.
And on social.
Absolutely. Absolutely. He shouldn't have. I tell you that. I mean, if he sees some of the shit, if he could come back now and see some of the shit that people are saying as if they're in a glass house and absolutely perfect, these people they should go and join fucking convents because they're clearly the purest of souls. They're just throwing stones 40 rapid like some sort of fucking biblical tale.
Today about the Paul McCartney book Fab.
Yeah.
The one that that line.
Yeah. It's not me. It's not you. It's me.
Yeah, that line. Well, I mentioned that, and Ginger Baker mentioned on Facebook. You do realise that not everything you read is true.
Yeah.
Ginger Baker.
Ginger Baker.
Yeah. His Facebook page, obviously.
Yeah.
And I said, well, that's fair enough. I says, I didn't actually say, that it was true or not.
I think it was true. You're not telling me Macca wasn't. I mean, come on. Look at the guy. He was in his 60s.
It was in context to these upcoming Sam Raimi films. Not Sam Raimi, Sam Mendes.
Yeah. Sam Mendes, yeah.
Yeah, Sam Mendes. Films coming up, doing individual sort of biopics of all four of them, and how glossed over is Paul's going to be. That's the thing that concerns me the most. Because I want to see moments like with Red and Fab. Whether it's true or not, it doesn't matter.
Steve, even the Lennon, I've said this before, I hate the fact what Yoko's done. I mean, I'm not one of these Yoko haters. I don't mind Yoko. I don't believe for a minute she split the Beatles up. That's a bullshit nonsense. They'd been together for their natural sort of course. Their output was what it was. George in particular had outgrown the band in terms of he was never going to get more than 2 or 3 songs per album, and he wasn't having it. He'd already a back catalogue. I mean, he was already a very accomplished writer. He was a great guitarist. He just wanted to split and do his own thing. You could see that in Get Back. I always laugh when they talk about Get Back and it not wanting to release the film in case it paints Macca in a bad light. It actually painted George in a bad light, and maybe to an extent Ringo and John. Macca, I mean, I understand he was probably pushing them, but he was just wanting to be part of a band. He was wanting to fucking create music. He loves doing it. I've watched so many interviews with the guy where he says time and again, I don't need to make music, but I love doing it.
Yeah, but no harm to Paul, John, but in terms of the Get Back sessions, I think at times he wasn't reading the room.
No, he wasn't.
He wasn't reading them at all, and it's sad in a way. I mean, I know Ringo said this many a times on chat shows, etc. And he said, if it wasn't for Paul, we probably wouldn't have got the sort of last 2 or 3 albums, that input. I don't, I know you like Abbey Road and Let It Be, that sort of period, John. My period is the mid sort of period.
I mean, Stephen, you know yourself, it changes all the time. You go through periods where you like the late stuff, then you like the early stuff. But time and again, I'm much like you, I do like the later stuff, but Rubber Soul and Revolver, up to maybe Sgt. Pepper's, getting into the White album, that era, like 65 through to 68.
Like It Be and Abbey Road didn't exist, I wouldn't have lost sleep over it. No. I'll be honest with you.
No, Stephen,
because I wouldn't have missed it. But I'm glad he did what he did, though. That's what I was getting round to. I'm glad Paul was motivated enough to get those last couple of albums out of the band before they did split, because we wouldn't have had.
You wouldn't have had something. You wouldn't have had Here Comes the Sun, which are two of George's best works. Yeah. You wouldn't have had Come Together. You wouldn't have had, off the top of my head, even the medley. I mean, I like the medley.
Yeah.
I'm not even going to mention Maxwell's Silver Hammer, because that's a shambles. Obviously, Get Back. I mean, there's some. I've been to, even the other day I was talking about it. There's songs on Get Back I can't listen to, Stephen. I'm not going to lie. Long and Winding Road. I just can't. I know it's a great song, but I can't take to it. It's too fucking long. It's too winding. I'm
not
sorry.
a fan of Get Back.
I love Get Back, but you're talking about the actual.
Song.
The song.
I'm not a big fan of the song. Well, obviously the album's called Let It Be. But I'm not a fan of Long Winding Road, Let It Be, or Get Back. I'm not a fan of them.
They're too long, Stephen. That's the problem. I was down in Matthews the other day and we were discussing it. I don't know how we got onto the subject. I think we're talking about Led Zeppelin and whatnot and how I can't really listen. It was actually in the house. I had them on FaceTime and I was discussing. I mean, Zeppelin are brilliant. Pink Floyd are brilliant, but they're too long. Their songs are too long, man. I can't be listening to 5 and 8 minute fucking solos. It's just gratuitous, masturbatory shite. I can't be listening to that. And the Beatles were guilty at the end as well of 5-6 minute long songs. What made the Beatles brilliant was those 2-3 minute long songs, pop songs that just bang, didn't overstay their welcome, were brilliant. That was when they were at their absolute pomp. So I do agree with you. I mean, whilst I do love the later albums, the last two.
What was happening around the Beatles is important to talk about as well, though, John. The other bands that were coming through at the time, Pink Floyd, Cream, Simon Garfunkel were doing their Bridge Over Troubled Waters, etc. And, it's all about evolving and moving with the times. So I understand to a point why the Beatles had to change the style of, a length of songs, etc., because longer songs were becoming a thing. For certain bands and likes of the Who, etc. And you've got to, I suppose, to a point, you want to. The Beatles were always good at that, moving forward on their own without repetition and without ripping off as much from other bands, and they were so unique, but at the same time they were aware of what was happening around them in terms of the music's evolution at the time, and they couldn't do This Boy and A Hard Day's Night in '69.
No.
So I get that. I mean, I'm like you, John. Some of the songs like Hey Jude are great anthems, etc. I'm not going to down them. They are great songs. There's not a bad Beatles song out there in my book.
There is. There's a couple. Wild Honey Pie.
In terms of those songs, they're not my favourites, but they're not the worst either.
Yeah. I can probably name in one hand. I'm slipping into Scottish slang there. I do apologise. One horn. Almost sounding fucking Japanese. It's bizarre the way we talk. Sometimes I catch myself speaking in slang. I'm like, what is wrong with us? It's an actual mental illness. What the fuck went wrong with Scottish people that we started, I'm saying Scottish people, Glaswegian people, that we started speaking like this? But yeah, I've totally lost my train of thought now. I was going to say something, I went off piste. I'm not Billy Connolly. I can't be doing tangents like that and then coming back. It's just not what I'm about. What was I going to say? That's annoying. Doesn't matter. It's completely gone. Needless to say, look, I feel like I've been shitting on now and then for this entire discussion. Basically, just came back and...
How did that win a Grammy?
I feel like I've retrospectively says this song is crap compared to the other ones. Not even a proper Beatles song, but I do love it. It's a brilliant song. It's poignant. and it's a great way to sort of bookend, and I hope it is the end. I did say in the thumbnail, the last Grammy. I sincerely hope we don't get like some Back to the Future cafe shit where we've got like some bastardised version of the Beatles popping up and there's not a single bit of human like connection in it. It's just some AI drivel that's come out and it wins a Grammy. I hope this is the last Grammy, which is sad because we are coming to the end in terms of output from the Beatles and what's in the archive. Yeah. We said this about the Get Back stuff, and also we got another documentary from Scorsese. There's maybe one or two other things lingering about that we're going to get, but we are getting to the point where the end is near in terms of new stuff. Obviously the remasters, you can always remaster and bring it up to a new level of fidelity for the time. So I suppose we'll never really see the end of Beatles output, but fresh, new stuff. It's poignant and sad that it's coming to an end, but with this, I hope this is the end in terms of Grammys, because I don't want to see any other bastardised music coming out. There's nothing fresh for them to do now, that's it. And obviously with that, just briefly touch on the Rolling Stones. Obviously they won a Grammy as well the other day for Hackney Diamonds. I mean, I love the Stones. They're different to the Beatles. And you've got to respect the desire to still go out in their 80s and tour and make new music. I think it's genuine. I think it's keeping Mick and Keith alive at this point. I think if they stopped, they would just fucking, that would be the end. So I don't want them to stop, but then at the same time, I kind of do want them to stop because I watched some of the live stuff from their most recent tour. Keith's miss-hitting fucking Start Me Up. I mean, it's like, it's a simple... You've been playing that for about 40 years, Keith. There's no way you should be miss-hitting that note, ever. It's like a simple fucking... It's like a fucking F.
It's a good album.
G bar
I mean, obviously, probably the standout track is probably Angry, because that was the one that sort of, well, from our perspective, sort of drew our attention to the album, but it's sort of going back to their, pardon the pun, going back to their roots, if you like. And I think it's probably the last album that Charlie appears on as well. He's in a few of the tracks, isn't he? But it's a good energy to it, you know, and for guys, their ages with the Beatles, aren't they? They're in their early 80s to mid 80s now.
Yeah, I think Keith's 81, 80, mix of it, the same,
got a voice, you know, he still has the voice, which is unbelievable when you think about it. This guy's been utilised
to a force of nature.
Yeah, and he's a good guitarist as well, which is, a lot of people don't sort of realise what a good musician he is, but
when you're floating about with Mick Taylor and Ronnie Wood and Keith Richards, though, you're never going to get a look in.
You're going to pick up something, I suppose, aren't you? But, Ron Wood as well. We can't forget Ron. I like Ron.
Ronnie's great,
a great guitarist, John. And the way, if you ever watch them, as you said, live, when they're on stage, they're both Ron and Keith are switching about, you know, lead. And it's phenomenal to watch just that, you know, and just that talent on display. And as you said, it's, you know, after all these guys are gone, there's nothing going to be like that ever again. No. Not in our time anyway.
No, there isn't. They are, even in an era where there was sheer brilliance in terms of musical output, they are the sort of Goliaths. I mean, you've got the likes of Bob Dylan, Elvis to an extent, although he was already waning by the time these guys were in their pomp. I mean, he'd done the return, didn't he? But fucking buggered off to Las Vegas and ruined his career because of that twat that was managing him. Guys like Led Zeppelin and The Who. I mean, he was a fucking twat. That guy, Colonel something.
Colonel Tom.
Bellend. Ruined one of the greatest voices and sort of artists of all time, forcing him to perform like a fucking stage monkey in Las Vegas. It's like, what are we doing here? Joke.
Very sad, yeah.
Absolute joke. But brilliant acts that were out then. I mean, you fucking little bands were brilliant. Bands that no one had even heard of. Little indie groups were sensational. I mean, even the one Steve and the Beatles helped sort of catapult to fame, I always forget their name, Ginger Haired Lad, that obviously took his life, tragic. They were brilliant.
Badfinger.
Badfinger, brilliant band.
Yeah.
But these guys, the Beatles and the Rolling Stones, they are truly special amongst a special time for music. And look, Sean was out speaking, and I think he said he accepted the award, Sean Lennon that is, that he hopes that people keep passing the Beatles down, and also the Stones to an extent as well, down to new generations, because we genuinely need these people for the future. A lot gets said about music and whatnot, and the Beatles and their greatness and where they are in pop culture, but you cannot play down how important it is. They're singing constantly about peace and love and unifying. And that's an important message to put out there when you're seeing 15-year-old kids getting stabbed to death outside the schools and people getting shot up. Peace and love, man. I mean, we like to poke fun at Ringo, but it's an important fucking message, and you do have to pass that down the musical output, the message.
Yeah, in terms of the Beatles, it's certainly that is the message, John. In terms of the Rolling Stones, they were all that wee bit more sort of
heavy.
I don't want to say easy. I don't think that's the right word. I think it's a bit of a discredit saying that, but certainly sexy, I suppose. The music was a bit more sort of, you know, in that sense. But no, you're absolutely right. I think that was the consistent message, the one constant throughout the Beatles discography. It was that message of love, peace and love, you know, and you're absolutely right. You know, it's in this day and age, I think people are embarrassed to embrace it, you know, and certainly in terms of artists, it's all about sort of surface, sort of materialistic stuff that people are singing about now. It's all about big houses and cars and...
Yeah. Did you see what I done? Came in a black Benz, left in a white one. Yeah. I think he's actually poking fun at that culture, that guy, to be fair. But yeah, he came in a black Benz, left in a white one. He's poking fun. He's basically saying, like, I'm just a hoodlum. People want to be me, I've got fuck all, it's all superficial, it's nonsense. I think that's actually poking fun. But it's an example. I mean, everything you listen to now is just about, let's be honest, getting your end away. Every single fucking song. I suppose you could go back throughout time and that's what it's all about, really. But certainly modern songs, just everything.
All about the bling.
Fucking everything. I mean, it is. It's ridiculous. So you get back, and that's an important thing for Sean to say. And look, it was great seeing Sean picking up the award. He gets a lot of nonsense as well from Beatles fans. And it's just not fair. I mean, Julian was on Rogan recently. It was actually, despite Rogan's sort of political leanings now, I do like to watch him still at times, and it was a great interview with Julian, and he spoke about Sean and the relationship they've got with each other. So I don't, again, going back, there's a insidious sort of nature to Beatles fandom in 2025 and certainly previous years, where they proclaim to be fans of the work and the group and the songs and the message that they consistently put out, but then they just, a little hateful streak in there. They like to take pot shots at Yoko because she's from a different culture and ethnicity to presumably them. Like to take pot shots at obviously Sean Lennon. Just a little hateful streak in there, which I don't like seeing, and I know you love fucking stirring it, Stephen.
A certain age group and a certain sex.
Oh yeah, it's women, yeah.
It's definitely a spitefulness about them, and it's funny, you know, when you look at their profiles and they're magged out they're not.
Oh yeah,
that's what it really is. I think a lot of people, in terms of John Lennon, didn't like him for his socialistic values and you know, his policies at times, and that I don't really care about things like that, John. There's, you know, when it comes to movie stars or artists in general, their political sort of leniencies don't really sway me in terms of their work, their body of work. I don't really care about it. You know, biggest sort of.
Unless you're Hulk Hogan. He's a proper prick.
I mean, I think if I was in America, I probably would have been a Democrat. Maybe not today's Democrats, but certainly, you know, in the 1980s, one of the biggest sort of voices for republicanism was Arnold Schwarzenegger, and I love Arnold. Love him to bits. Love the guy. Love his films. Just love his sort of work ethos, and just didn't care about the fact that he was a big Republican. Didn't really. See, to be fair, I don't even. I'm not dissing on Republicans, John. I'm not dissing on Republicans.
I mean, I don't even view Trump as a Republican, though, Stephen. He's like a completely separate thing.
It's not my argument, so I'm not getting into that. But my point is, in terms of John Lennon, I don't really care about his politics. It's all about the art. No, I know you would have went a night out with him with Keith Moon.
I would love to have went out a night out, mid-70s in LA, just fucking strawberry daiquiris. I think that's what you drank, wasn't it?
Brandy Alexander's.
Sorry. Yeah, I'm completely fucking off a different piece altogether. Strawberry daiquiris, no chance. John Lennon was drinking that, no chance. I heard about that night, by the way, where he was on the Brandy Alexander's and beating the shit out of people left, right and centre. It was him and some...
It was a troubadour.
Yeah. It was a book. Yeah, I've been reading Laurie Kay.
Yeah, the book.
Yeah, I've been reading the book, and she spoke about that. She went to a live performance there, and not realising that, like, 10 years later or something that John Lennon would be in that very spot and obviously kicking off, and that's a great aspect of that book that I'm really enjoying, that just all the little connections, sort of like cultural connections. She's been here, and then
I know. Obviously, we'll hopefully talk about that with Laurie pretty soon, John. But it really was a sort of I won't say this to her in case she takes it the wrong way, but it was almost like a real life Forrest Gump situation where she was in the right place at the right time. You know, not comparing her to Forrest Gump by any means, but
no, but you're right though. A lot of things kind of dropped her way in terms of like winning contests that helped really propel her in terms of a person, and then as a professional aspect, that meeting people just at the right time. And look, we've spoke about that before. I'm a big fan of Brian Limmy Lemon, brilliant comedian over here. He spoke about it. To be successful, and I'm certainly not successful, so I'm not going to fucking preach, but people who have been successful in life and have earned great wealth will maintain that you can be hard-working, you can be talented, but you need the breaks in life. You need to have little lucky moments, and that will obviously get you places. You can combine all of them, but you need your breaks, and that obviously comes through in that book, certainly breaks. But no, Stephen, I would love to have had a night out with John Lennon back in the day. Fucking what an experience it would have been. Keith Moon, man. John Lennon, Ringo Starr.
Harry Nilsson,
Harry Nilsson, fucking rattled. What a night. You can't ask for more than that. But Stephen, briefly going to talk about something else before we round this up. I mean, I'm surprised we've went nearly an hour. I mean, that shows you the power of the Beatles and just how much we can talk. I mean, I can talk about the Beatles for fucking 10 hours. I really could. That's just scraping the surface. But if you've got any thoughts on down there winning a Grammy, obviously the Stones with Hackney Diamonds winning a Grammy as well. First one was 63, I want to say, 61 year gap, 63, 64, and they've won another Grammy. Share your thoughts down below about that in the comments section. Moving on though, Stephen, final sort of little discussion we're going to have. Been linked or reported here, there and everywhere. I think it was actually screengeek.net, whoever they are. Not trying to be derisory there, I'm just being honest, I don't know who Screen Geek are, but they broke the exclusive and it's now all over the internet that Marvel's Kevin Feige is considering bringing Jonathan Majors back to the Marvel Cinematic Universe once again to portray Kang the Conqueror. Now also we have got Doctor Doom, Robert Downey Jr. playing a variant of Doctor Doom. I know that wasn't the original one, it wasn't a sort of evil Tony Stark. It was a totally separate guy. Victor Doom, I think it was, wasn't it?
Victor, yeah.
But, and we know we're not going to get Jonathan Majors back as the big bad. It's now very much Doctor Doom. It's going to be building into those double-header Avengers movies. They've changed the creative sort of vision for this saga. But what's your thoughts on this, Stephen? I think this speaks volume, really, about, or volumes, plural, because I don't know what the fuck volume means, about society and where we are now. The whole cancel culture thing seems to be gone now. Like, if this happened 7-8 years ago, Majors would have had no way back for what he's done. And also Shia LaBeouf to an extent get cancelled.
Yeah, John, I'll be honest with you, I never really connected with Kang and Jonathan Majors' portrayal, right through from his introduction. I think it might have been in Loki, I can't remember.
It was, yeah.
And then obviously appearing in the last Ant-Man film. I don't know what it was, the vibes just weren't right for me, and it was nothing to do with Jonathan Majors, who, you know, take away obviously the personal side of things, he's a fine actor. We saw him in the Five Bloods, John, as the son, and I think that may be the first film I saw him in, and he was fantastic in that, up against really veteran actors as well, and held his own. And it's nothing to do with his performance or anything like that. I just think the introduction to what was going to be the next Thanos, I don't know, it was very underwhelming. And the choice of film to have him feature in after that was the Ant-Man film, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And I don't know, it was just...
And it bombed.
I get what they're doing. It's very similar to the Flash situation, where they just want to wrap things up, tie things up and move on. And just keep the canon and move on. So I get it from that sort of professional point of view, and just, you know, move on, as you said, with obviously the Doctor Doom sort of process. But I don't really. I get it's not a return as such that he's coming back in a big way or anything like that. It's really just to sort of
No, they did say that. Yeah, they says that they'll bring them back basically to wrap up loose ends with Kang and close the character story. So he'd come back for one last sort of movie and end his sort of tenure. But again, Stephen, that wouldn't have happened till 8 years ago, 10 years ago, when this whole cancel culture was in its infancy, into sort of the peak where you've got Johnny Depp getting fucking contracts cancelled with Warner Brothers and Disney for what hearsay he said, she said, and obviously then when he wins his case, Amber Heard doesn't get cancelled. That wouldn't have happened. They would have had no sort of route back into acting. That's not something I'm about. I mean, also I don't condone domestic violence and assaulting a woman. Totally unacceptable. I don't know the circumstances of which it arose. I don't know if she was threatening him. I wasn't there. So I'm not going to sit here and completely condone or paint him to be a saint. I don't know what the fuck happened. You can't condone it either way though. But everyone has to have a sort of... You need to have room for growth. We're not perfect. Humans are imperfect. How shall I put it? Just imperfect in every fucking walk of life, every shape or form. And you need to be able to grow from your mistakes. Be it this, be it something else. Also, there's certain things you can't regrow from if you're there's certain things that are unacceptable and you can't come back from, but I don't think this is one of them. I think you can learn and come back from it. And 10 years ago, you wouldn't have had that opportunity. So I'm glad we've got over the cancel culture thing. I'm glad that he's a fine actor. I hope he's learnt from whatever the hell it was going on. I think he gets sent to some sort of clinic to sort of give him lessons on, I don't know what the fuck it is, I've never went to one, but basically teach him and try and mould him into a better person. Again, I don't know what happens, so I don't want to speak too freely. Yeah, it's kind of like rehab, but it's for like domestic abuse. It's like for people who are survivors or maybe were involved in it, and they try to educate and maybe make you change your ways. Hopefully he's came out the other side a better person, like Johnny Depp. Well, not Johnny Depp, Robert Downey Jr. with the whole going down a rabbit hole with certain drugs and whatnot back in the day. He was in a really dark place. Look at him, he came out the other side. Now he's a brilliant actor. He's gave us some incredible work. And he's really respected in the industry. So I'm glad to see we're not crucifying people anymore. But I'm with you. The character was never that interesting to me. Just fucking... And where do you go with a guy that can go back in time and change events to suit himself and make himself the victor? I mean, you can't really beat a guy like that. It's just boring. I'd prefer someone like a Doom. Either way, they're screwed though, Stephen.
It was borderline with Thanos once he got those stones, though, John, as well. I was concerned about that. It was like, he's going to be ever powerful and no one's going to be able to beat that. But they obviously, they manufactured a way of doing that. And yeah, I mean, it's just never... coming off the back of Thanos as well was always going to be a hard follower, you know, and I get why they employed Majors to come in and do that because of his screen presence and his delivery and his chemistry with other actors. But the character, I think, was very underwhelming, from the kick-off. I don't think his introduction should have been in a TV show. I think that was a mistake. And I loved Loki. It was a great series, John. And I just felt it was underwhelming. I think the variant that he was playing in that was too light-hearted.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was just to sort of catch us out and then we would see the real villain.
I think that's what the plan was, I think it was meant to be like a really evil, particularly powerful variant down the road. And that would be the proper one. I think it was multiple different versions. I think that's the route that we're going, but I'm used to
you know, but it wasn't menacing enough for me.
I mean, you think of Thanos, I mean, it wasn't Josh Brolin, was it, in the initial post-credit stuff with Loki? I think it was someone else. They really took their time introducing that character and then built it up to what we got. And Brolin's unbelievable. So, I mean, you're always, like you said, going to have your hands full trying to step into his shoes moving forward and give us something.
Yeah, fans are really fickle. We're seeing that just now with, obviously, David Corenswet with Superman stuff. And the Snyder fans, and I'm a Snyder fan, but I'm always willing to give people a chance and see what they can do. And the fact that that film is getting absolutely bashed by Snyder fans before it's even released says a lot about them more than it does about the film and James Gunn.
Yeah.
You know,
Very childish, yeah.
Get it right. If they don't get it right, then they don't get it right. But give it a chance.
Yeah, they're just childish. They've got their sort of... I mean, everything's so tribalistic now. Politics, everything. It's us v them. There's no in between. It was like Ewan said back in the day with Obi-Wan. Sith, what is it? You're either for me or against me. What was it he says? I'm fucking blank on that. It's terrible. Only a Sith deals in absolutes. Wow. Only a dog, like my dog, can produce flatulence like that. It would literally provoke a guttural reaction. It's like... it's like... That's how I imagine the trash compactor. The smell on the Death Star. That smell right there. That is a fucking horror.
I've said to you before, I've only ever witnessed that, or sampled that kind of smell before, and it was in a dark alleyway in Crete at night time. And it was something, I don't know what it was.
Something dead.
That's what it was. Something that, similar to the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. It was definitely some kind of creature that doesn't have a partner.
Yeah. You know what it puts me in mind of? It puts me in mind of those weird sea creatures they pull out the water every now and again in like the far reaches of Far East Asia. And it's like these weird, fucked up, deep sea creatures. You're like, what the fuck is that? That's how they smell, in my mind. Just really abhorrent flatulence my dog produces. It's just completely unacceptable, really. I always maintain no living thing should be able to produce death like that. It's like his arsehole, his intestines are actually decaying, and it's like bile he's producing, and it's vaporised into like an aerosol, and it's just fucking assaulting my nostrils. It's completely unacceptable. Thankfully, it's dissipated, so we're back cooking with gas, literal gas. Oh, horrendous. I was going to say something else. Also reacted to Fantastic Four, Stephen. I've not put it out yet. Wait, you need to stick around to the end of that video to see me stroking out, trying to say fucking official. And teaser afterwards, I thought I'd get over it. And then I went to say teaser, and I said treaser. I said a thistle. And then I went on to say treaser. Couldn't speak English momentarily. And I'm just deliberately going out my way here, just for anyone that perhaps ventures into that video and then maybe sees we've done a live stream the same day, and maybe wants to listen, and then they can understand I can speak coherent English. Even if you can't understand me, there is big words I can say. That was just an aberration. That's not me. That's not a fair reflection of my ability to speak the King's English. But we reacted to Fantastic Four, and Steve, I have to say, I think they've got a winner chicken dinner on their hands here. In terms of the MCU, just maybe briefly fucking round up on that. I mean, I don't really want to overstay my welcome because we want people to watch the fucking video. But I enjoyed it.
Too much.
I enjoyed it. Yeah. I enjoyed it very much.
Yeah, and I think this might be the welcome boost that the MCU needs at this stage, introducing these characters now. We did say, it's been a long time since that was announced, obviously coming in at a certain phase, and I think it might have been 2-3 years ago that it was Fantastic Four, obviously the X-Men and Blade. We know what happened with that. But I just think it's been a long time coming, and early signs look good.
They do. Yeah, I'm just looking at the playback on the YouTube studio, and it's about an hour behind, and it's a wide shot of you, Stephen. I tell you what, man, I think that wide shot looks great. I really do think you've come on leaps and bounds with the lighting, and look, see that sort of like blood background. I could probably be doing with that with the fucking setup I've got behind me. I've got like leads behind me, not that one there. I can't even fucking reach it. Maybe I should be blurring my background and doing something, but it looks good. We need to be utilising those wide shots more moving forward.
Yeah, why not?
So I can have a fucking breakdown while I'm on it, because that's what I like to do. Consistently break down mentally every time it goes to me. You remember Crock of Gold? I do. What's your thoughts though on the topics we discussed on the show tonight? I presume we're done here. What's your thoughts on the Beatles winning a Grammy? Share your thoughts down below. What's your thoughts on Jonathan Majors potentially having a rout back into the MCU in terms of one movie, and then he's back off into the trash heap. Just going to keep using Americanisms here. Pharmacy, vacation, multiplayer, multi-millionaire, mobile, mid-mobile. Share your thoughts down below if you have anything to say about anything we discussed on the stream stroke show, whatever you want to call it. That's the place to put your thoughts. Like the video if you've enjoyed it. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon to get notifications straight to your eyes for future content like this, be it videos, reactions, reviews, watch-alongs, live streams, anything at all. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell icon, do all of that. It helps generate eyeballs onto the channel. Eyeballs. Same thing over on Twitch. You can't do the liking, but you can subscribe and follow, whatever the fuck you call it. You can't subscribe because we're not big enough for that, but you can follow and hit the notifications button. All that's left to be said is until the next time, thank you once again for watching us, and bye-bye.